hearing some very urgent timetables. The sand is going through the hourglass on the nuclear capability, on Iran's strategic move to impose much greater threats on Israel, on the region, and on Europe and North America. Do people think about that in Europe? Are they conscious of sort of geopolitical tectonic moves which pose a longer-term threat? I know you mentioned Foreign Minister Zarif. Most people in Washington think that he's the equivalent of the U.S. Secretary of State, but as we were talking before, he has none of the same kind of authorities and even ambassadors in the field that the U.S. Secretary of State would have. And Mr. Rouhani doesn't seem to come into the conversation when we talk about the tactical situation in the Levant or the nuclear program. He seems to have nothing to do with it. So perhaps a perspective on what you've heard from a European view.
Let me put it this way. You asked us, Lincoln, you asked a simple question. What can we do for people to better understand what's at stake here? And I was scribbling a few lines, what I call may pass or may not pass the T-shirt test. You know, some simple sentences that you can put on a T-shirt. Okay, slogans. One, let me give you four. One is that the idea that trade brings moderation has not been proven historically. Okay, that doesn't make for a very nice T-shirt, but you get my, you're getting my point. I mean, I wouldn't buy that T-shirt. It would be. But you know what I mean. Two, the Middle East is not a place for zero-sum gaming. There is as much sectarian violence on the so-called Shia side, Persian/Shia side, than on the Sunni/Arab side. And that's something that unfortunately many, I mean, there is no, violence has no religion, if I can put it this way. And the behavior of Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and in Syria and in other places of war is certainly no better than many so-called Sunni militias. Iran is propping up a regime, the Syrian regime, which is fighting, has been fighting the French interests. I'm not talking about distant history. I'm not talking about the 80s. I'm talking about the Bashar al-Assad regime, okay, which has been actively fighting our own national interests in Lebanon, for instance. But most importantly, I accept the idea that the Islamic Republic considers Daesh, ISIS as a threat and is actively fighting it. I accept that. Except that I said that it was also the arsonist and fireman. But most importantly, by propping up the Syrian regime, Iran is actually reinforces ISIS on the longer run because the best friend, as surprising as it still sounds to many European ears and maybe some American ears, the best friend of ISIS is actually Bashar al-Assad. It's two faces of the same coin. So Iran may claim it actually does fight ISIS. I accept it. We have to accept it. But if you prop up the Assad regime at the same time, in the end, you end up reinforcing Sunni jihadism, of Daesh ISIS type. Finally, one word on the nuclear front. You're completely right. 10 years by diplomatic standards is a short period of time. By nuclear program standards is a very short period of time. Now, I accept it when my diplomat friends from Europe and the United States say, hey, we're buying 10 years. Okay, time is a precious commodity in international diplomacy, and 10 years is nothing. But hey, we already passed 2 years, okay? Only 8 years to go. And Iran is not showing the behavior of a country which has given up for good the nuclear option. This is fundamental. I'm ready to give the Islamic Republic of Iran a chance. But Iran is not South Africa, okay? The IAEA is not in a position to draw a so-called broad conclusion about the peaceful nature of the nuclear program. I accept the hypothesis. Okay, if one tells me, if Iran says, if the IAEA says, well, okay, let's change the behavior here, and if all the Iranian signals were, okay, you know what, we had a nuclear option, we had a nuclear weapons program, but we decided that it was no longer in our interest. I said, okay, show it. There are very simple ways, and Bob knows that very well. There are simple ways, technical ways to show that, okay? Your good faith, just as South Africa, for instance. Iran is not showing that behavior, okay? And finally, on the sanctions that are supposed to be the big deterrent in the deal, the idea that don't worry if Iran is violating the deal, we'll reimpose sanctions. But that's the problem. You see, Iran is testing the deal. Iran is pushing the envelope. And now we have a fundamental contradiction, because if our idea is to massively reinforce trade with Iran as to lock up Iran in an interdependency relationship, then how credible would be our threat of reinstating sanctions? Because we would be shooting ourselves not in the foot, but in two